Hello and a very warm welcome to all of you for this special session of the Tata Literature Live Poet Laureate Award, a special part of Tata Literature Live 2020, the 11th annual Mumbai International Literature Festival and the first one to be completely digital. Our thanks to our title sponsor Tata and co-sponsors Tata Steel and Tata Projects. And to start off this session, मैं एक गुस्ताखी करूंगी. Here's a line from our poet laureate. ये खामोशी जो गुफ्तगू के बीच ठहरी है, ये खामोशी जो गुफ्तगू के बीच ठहरी है, यही सारी बात, सारी गुफ्तगू में सबसे गहरी है. I'd now like to invite the brand custodian of Tata Sons, author and literature lover, Mr. Harish Bhatt, to say a few words about our poet laureate this year. Over to you, Mr. Bhatt.
Thank you very much, Meher, and it gives me the greatest of privilege to speak on this platform today and firstly talk about Javed Saab. Everyone in India knows Javed Saab. We have grown up with his lyrics, we have grown up with his music. He has brought so much beauty into all our lives through his poetry, which has been set to such wonderful music across so many movies that all of us have watched, admired and enjoyed. I'd like to take this occasion to thank Javed Saab for being here with us today to receive the Poet Laureate Award at Tata Literature Live. It is indeed a privilege for us that he has decided to accept this award and be here today in a conversation with the festival director Anil Dharker. May I only say this to you, Javed Saab, please keep enchanting us, delighting us, please promote us with your poetry, eat deep into our souls and hearts. Once again, it's such a privilege to be here this evening, and thank you very much. On behalf of the Tata Group, we are delighted that the Poet Laureate Award this year of Tata Literature Live is being given out to Javed Akhtar, who needs no introduction at all in our country and in most parts of the world. Privilege once again. Thank you, Meher.
Thank you so much for those touching words and those lovely thoughts. I'd now like to invite Mr. Ashutosh Gowariker, an award-winning writer, filmmaker and occasional actor whose landmark films include Lagan, which was nominated for an Oscar in the Best Foreign Film category. Interestingly, Mr. Gowariker has collaborated with Javed Saab 8 times to give us some unforgettable songs in his films. So, it only seems fitting that he will be reading out the citation for Mr. Javed Akhtar, the Tata Literature Live Poet Laureate of the Year. Over to you, Mr. Gowariker.
A warm good evening to everyone. In this pandemic era, I was wondering what's going to happen this year with the Tata Literature Festival, and trust Anilji to come up with this digital method of doing it. I'm very, very happy to be here today. Especially for this special citation for Javed Saab. Poet, writer, lyricist, politician, activist, philanthropist, thinker, philosopher. I'm not sure whether I've missed any epithets. When I'm asked to prepare a citation in honor of Mr. Javed Akhtar, suddenly the enormity of his stature overwhelms me. I'm now in the glare of his mammoth persona, like a fledgling bird looking at the sun. Javed Akhtar's original name was Jadoo, taken from a line in a poem written by his father. Lamha lamha kisi jadoo ka fasana hoga. This explains the magic Javed Saab created through his life. He simply lived up to his name. My personal encounter with Javed Saab began in the dark setting of various cinema halls with this film magic that he created together with his creative partner, Salim Khan Saab. While the writer duo of Salim Javed had the world at their feet with films like Zanjeer and Sholay, Diwar, Trishul and so many others, my personal enjoyment of their work began a little earlier with Hathi Mere Sathi, Andaz, Sita aur Geeta and Yadon Ki Baaraat. The work of Salim Javed had a big impact on me. After all, 20 of their 24 films are super hits. Later, it has been my sheer delight and privilege to be involved with Javed Saab. He has written songs in the Bhakti tradition for Ram, Krishna and Shiva. So Pal Pal Hai Bhari from Swades, Manmohana from Jodha Akbar, and Manvi Shiva from Panipat. I was mesmerized by the broadness of his canvas, as his lyrics spanned various themes and emotions, be it nationalism, patriotism, women empowerment, religious intolerance, casteism, environmental hazards, illiteracy, Krishna's mischief, lullabies, gender equality, LGBTQ issues, terrorism, and many, many more. While spending innumerable moments with him during the last 20 years, I kept observing and absorbing his personality. He is someone who does not think twice before praising someone, appreciating someone's work. At the same time, he does not fall back in expressing his reservation against something equally strong words. These are qualities which make for an ease of communication and a heartwarming association. The multifaceted nature of Javed Saab's persona can be summed by the various honors that he has received and continues to do so. Winner of 5 national awards, 16 filmfares, many more related to his innumerable films. He is the recipient of the Padma Shri in 1999, the Padma Bhushan in 2007, the Sahitya Academy Award in Urdu for his poetry collection Lava, honorary doctorates from Pondicherry University in 2010 and then from Jamia Hamdard University in 2019. And the most recent, the Richard Dawkins Award, for being a powerful force of secularism, reason, and human rights. He has also been nominated as a member to the Rajya Sabha. He has enlightened the House with several of his burning ideologies and thoughts. The most historic achievement being the passing of the Copyright Amendment Bill that restores dignity to lyricists and music composers and gives them what is rightfully theirs in terms of royalty. His brilliance could not be contained in the world of creativity and politics. He shone equally bright in the world of social causes, philanthropy, and philosophy. He has been admired for his secular, liberal, and progressive values and written many poems against communalism, social injustice, and for women's rights. He has also worked incessantly towards building a consensus on controversial issues of Muslims, such as the Uniform Civil Code, the Triple Talaq, and the Hajj subsidy. Javed Saab's name will no doubt survive for centuries to come. He is our very own Leonardo da Vinci, who has had the vision, courage, and commitment to march ahead on each of these different paths and excel in every single one of them. For me, an important part of my creative life is inextricably linked with Javed Saab, and for that, I remain privileged and enriched. Thank you, Javed Saab, for everything. It is a great honor for me to present him with the Tata Literature Life Poet Laureate Award in recognition and salutation for his sustained and outstanding contribution to poetry in India. Javed Saab.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gowariker, for reading out the citation. I'm sure, like everyone else who's joined us for this meeting, I so wish we could all have been together at this festival and presented you with the plaque and the shawl and citation in person. But these are strange times that we're all living in, and so, well, you know what the circumstances are. Nevertheless, we would like the man of the hour, our Poet Laureate, Tata Literature Live 2020, Maestro Javed Akhtar, to please say a few words to us.
Thank you very much. At the very outset, I would like to thank Anil ji and the other organizers, and then Ashutosh ji for his very, very kind and extremely generous introduction. And it really is very important to me because it is coming from somebody who is suffering me since last 20 years. So it becomes even more important. It was so generous that I don't know how you people have reacted, but now I am dying to listen to myself after this citation. I think this festival or such festivals have never been as important as they are today. Because what has happened in the last couple of decades, in 2 or 3 decades, we have all been running to catch the gravy train. And today, pen is more powerful than the sword, only because you can sign a check with a pen, not with a sword. So anything which cannot be deposited in the bank or cannot be withdrawn from the bank is not of much significance. At this time, when to catch the gravy train, we have left certain baggage on the platform, like culture, literature, folk arts, language. Poetry is also one of those packages which were left on the platform because we were in a hurry to catch a train. But ultimately, literature, art, make persons worth for whatever you get from technology, from business, from trade, from everything. If the society gets materially more affluent, more comfortable, but society is a group of people and ultimately individuals. Is that individual trained enough to use all these facilities rightly, to respect these privileges and use them correctly? That is the question, because for that, the individual has to be rooted. The individual should have empathy and sympathy for others. The individual should have the heart at the right place. And I think all art ultimately does this, that tries to bring your heart at the right place. You develop aesthetics. Aesthetics means appreciation of beauty, and all that is unjust, all that is unfair is ugly. All that is just is beautiful. So if we develop that kind of sensitivity, which art, particularly literature, provides, is extremely important at the moment, because we are gaining on one front and we cannot afford to lose on the other. That's why I think these festivals at this moment are very, very important, although because of certain circumstances, we cannot go about them the way we used to. But now, thank you very much to all of you that you have organized this. And I'm very, very thankful for the honor that you are bestowing upon me. And I know that I have to speak a lot. Anilji will not leave me like this. His questions are going to be very, very problematic for me. So I'll save my breath and my voice for that occasion. And then we have to recite some poetry. I think we should come down to business and let's have some poems. Thank you.
Your words could not have been truer, Javed Saab. Sach mein bahut nayab lafz the. We now have a recitation of Javed Saab's poems by the maestro himself. And reading out the English translations of the poems for our international audiences, we have actress, author and producer and a huge admirer of Javed Saab's works, Ma'am Tisca Chopra. Over to you, Javed Saab and Miss Chopra.
Before I start reciting the poem, I think in all fairness, I must tell you that most of these poems are translated by Dr. David Matthews, who was till recently with SOAS, University of London. Now he has retired. And the last poem which I'll recite today is by a friend, Rakshanda Jalil, who is perhaps at the moment the most important translator of Urdu literature to English, into English. And this is translated, the last poem is translated by her. So I'll start with the first poem, Ye Khel Kya Hai? And then I'll request Tisca ji, who is kind enough to agree to do the needful. Thank you very much. That she will recite the translation. ये खेल क्या है? ये क्या है आखिर कि ये खेल क्या है? मेरे मुखालिफ ने चाल चल दी है और अब मेरी चाल के इंतजार में है. मेरे मुखालिफ ने चाल चल दी है और अब मेरी चाल के इंतजार में है. अगर मैं कब से सफेद खानों स्याह खानों में रखे काले सफेद मोहरों को देखता हूं, मैं सोचता हूं ये मोहरे क्या हैं. अगर मैं सोचूं कि ये जो मोहरे हैं सिर्फ लकड़ी के हैं खिलौने, तो जीतना क्या है हारना क्या? न ये जरूरी न वो है. अगर खुशी है न जीतने की न हारने का ही कोई गम है, तो खेल क्या है? मैं सोचता हूं जो खेलना है तो अपने दिल में यकीन कर लूं, ये मोहरे सचमुच के बादशाह हो वजीर, सचमुच के हैं प्यादे और इनके आगे है दुश्मनों की वो फौज, रखती है जो कि मुझको तबाह करने के सारे मंसूबे सब इरादे. मगर मैं ऐसा जो मान भी लूं तो सोचता हूं ये खेल कब है? ये जंग है जिसको जीतना है, ये जंग है जिसमें सब है जाए। तो ये कहता है जैसे मुझसे, ये जंग भी है, ये खेल भी है, ये जंग है पर खिलाड़ियों की, ये खेल है जंग की तरह का। मैं सोचता हूं जो खेल है इसमें इस तरह का उसूल क्यों है कि कोई मोहरा रहे कि जाए, अगर जो है बादशाह उस पर कभी कोई आंच भी ना आए। वजीर ही को है इजाजत कि जिस तरफ भी वो चाहे जाए। मैं सोचता हूं जो खेल है इसमें इस तरह का उसूल क्यों है। प्यादा जो अपने घर से निकले पलट के वापस न जाने पाए। मैं सोचता हूं अगर यही है उसूल तो फिर उसूल क्या है? अगर यही है ये खेल तो फिर ये खेल क्या है? मैं इन सवालों से जाने कब से उलझ रहा हूं। मेरे मुखालिफ ने चाल चल दी है और अब मेरी चाल के इंतजार में है। थैंक यू।
What is this game? My opponent has made a move and now awaits mine. But for a long time, I stare at the black and white pieces that sit on the white and black squares. And I wonder, what are these pieces? If I were to assume that these pieces are no more than wooden toys, then what is the point in victory or defeat? Neither this necessary nor is that important. If there is no pleasure in a win, nor sorrow in a loss, then what is this game? I think if I must play, then I should convince myself that these pieces are indeed kings and queens, that these are real foot soldiers, and arrayed before them is the enemy army, which plans and intends to destroy me. If I were to make myself believe this, then I think this is no longer a mere game. This is a war that must be won, a war in which all is fair. It is as if somebody says to me, this is a war and a game too. This is a war but one between players. A game, but one like war. I ask myself this game, why does it have such a rule that no matter what happens to any one of the pieces, the one that is king must be protected from harm at all times? That only the queen has the freedom to move in any direction it wants. I wonder, this game, why does it have such a rule that once a pawn leaves home, it can never return? I wonder, if this is the rule, then what are rules? If this is the game, then what is this game? I've been wrestling with these questions for a long time. Meanwhile, my opponent has made a move and awaits mine.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you will notice soon that I have more questions than answers. So many of my poems start with a question and get into the detail of the question, that's all. My next poem is Teardrop, Aansu. The journey of a tear. किसी का गम सुन के मेरी पलकों पे एक आंसू जो आ गया है, ये आंसू क्या है? ये आंसू क्या है? गवाह है मेरी दर्दमंदी का, मेरी इंसान दोस्ती का। ये आंसू क्या एक सबूत है मेरी जिंदगी में खुलूस की एक रोशनी का। ये आंसू क्या ये बता रहा है कि मेरे सीने में एक हसास दिल है जो कि किसी की दिलदोज दास्तां सुनी तो सुन के तड़प उठा है, पराए शोलों में जल रहा है, पिघल रहा है। मगर मैं फिर खुद से पूछता हूं, ये दास्तां तो अभी सुनी है, ये आंसू भी क्या अभी ढला है? ये आंसू क्या मैं समझूं पहले कहीं नहीं था? मुझे तो शक है कि ये कहीं था। ये मेरे दिल और मेरी पलकों के दरमियान एक जो फासला है, जहां ख्यालों के शहर बसते हैं और ख्वाबों की तुरबतें, जहां मोहब्बत के उजड़े बागों में तलखियों के बबूल है और कुछ नहीं है, जहां से आगे हैं उलझनों के घनेरे जंगल। ये आंसू शायद बहुत दिनों से वहीं छुपा था। जिन्होंने इसको जन्म दिया था वो रंग तो मसलहत के हाथों न जाने कब कत्ल हो गए थे। तो करता फिर किस पे नाज आंसू? कि हो गया बेजवास आंसू, यतीम आंसू, यसीर आंसू, न मौत पर था न रास्तों ही से बाखबर था, तो चलते चलते ठिठक गया था, झिझक गया था। इधर से आज किसी के गम की कहानी का कारवां जो गुजरा, इधर से आज किसी के गम की कहानी का कारवां जो गुजरा, यतीम आंसू ने जैसे जाना कि इस कहानी की सरपरस्ती मिले तो मुमकिन है राह पाना, तो एक कहानी की उंगली थामे उसी के गम को रुमाल करता, उसी के बारे में झूठे सच्चे सवाल करता। ये मेरी पलकों तक आ गया है।
वाह।
थैंक यू।
Teardrop. Upon hearing about someone's sorrow, a teardrop has appeared on my eyelashes. What is this tear? Does this tear bear witness to my compassion, my love for humanity? Is this tear proof of the light of selflessness in my life? Does this tear demonstrate that a sensitive heart beats in my chest, which upon hearing another's heart-rending tale has been moved and is burning in the flames of another's pain, melting in them? But then I ask myself, I have only just heard this tale. Has this teardrop too only just formed? Should I assume that this tear didn't exist before now? I suspect that it was there, somewhere in the distance between my heart and my eye, where entire cities of feelings flourish, where dreams lie buried, where the blighted gardens of love nurture thorny trees of bitterness, and nothing else, and beyond which lie dense forests of anxiety. This teardrop had probably been lurking there for several days. The grief that had birthed it long been murdered at the hands of expediency, with no one to be proud of, its legitimacy in doubt, fatherless, motherless, unable to command any respect, unfamiliar with the paths. This tear had stopped in its tracks, hesitant, scared. Today, when a caravan of someone's sorrowful tale passed by this way, the orphan tear hoped that if it could secure this tale's patronage, then it might be possible to find its way out. And so, clutching the story's finger, claiming its sadness, asking it random questions about itself, it has made its way to my eyelashes.
Thank you. उलझन, करोड़ों चेहरे और उनके पीछे करोड़ों चेहरे, करोड़ों चेहरे और उनके पीछे करोड़ों चेहरे, ये रास्ते हैं कि भिल के छत्ते, जमीन जिस्मों से ढक गई है, कदम तो क्या दिल भी धरने की अब जगह नहीं है। ये देखता हूं तो सोचता हूं कि अब जहां हूं वहीं सिमट कर खड़ा रहूं मैं, मगर करूं क्या कि जानता हूं जो रुक गया तो जो भीड़ पीछे से आ रही है तो मुझको पैरों तले कुचल देगी, पीस देगी। तो अब जो चलता हूं मैं तो खुद मेरे पैरों में आ रहा है, किसी का सीना, किसी का बाजू, किसी का चेहरा। चलूं तो औरों पे जुल्म ढाऊं, रुकूं तो औरों के जुल्म झेलूं। ज़मीर, तुझको तो नाज है अपनी मुनसफी पर, जरा सुनूं तो क्या आज का तेरा फैसला है।
Perhaps I should forget you. This is now the proper thing to do.
No,
But even
no, hello. Dilemma is on page 29.
Yes, I'm reading from page 29.
Maybe it's another edition, but look for the poem Dilemma. Oh, it's a dilemma. Give it to me. Give me the book. Maybe I have given you the wrong title. Who knows? Just a second. Give me that book. Okay, just a second. Sorry for this confusion. Let's do one thing. the poem that she is reading in English, let me recite in Hindi. It's a very short poem, and then let her continue with it. Hang on. I'll recite the original. Then you recite the translation. We'll forget that one. मैं भूल जाऊं तुम्हें अब यही मुनासिब है, मगर भुलाना भी चाहूं तो किस तरह भूलूं कि तुम तो फिर भी हकीकत हो, कोई ख्वाब नहीं। यहाँ तो दिल का यह आलम है, क्या कहूं, कमबख्त भुला सका ये वो सिलसिला जो था ही नहीं, वो एक ख्याल जो आवाज तक गया ही नहीं, वो एक बात जो मैं कह नहीं सका तुमसे, वो एक रब्त जो हम में कभी रहा ही नहीं, मुझे है याद वो सब जो कभी हुआ ही नहीं।
Beautiful poem this.
Yeah.
Dilemma. Perhaps I should forget you. This is now the proper thing to do. But even if I wish to erase you from my mind, how can I forget? After all, you are real, not just a dream. What can I say about this wretched heart that could never forget? The rapport that never was, that idea, that one idea, which was never expressed, that word, that one word, which I could not say to you. That relationship, which never existed between you and me. I remember all those things, which never happened.
Okay. Now, there is a poem, Time, which is a bit long. So, Tisca ji and me have decided to recite it in parts. I'll recite the first part, then she'll read the translation, then I'll go to the second, and so on. So we have divided it. So the translation and the recital will move together. The very title tells you about the content or the subject, time. ये वक्त क्या है? ये क्या है आखिर जो मुसलसल गुजर रहा है? ये जब ना गुजरा था तब कहाँ था? कहीं तो होगा। गुजर गया है तो अब कहाँ है? कहीं तो होगा। कहाँ से आया, किधर गया है? ये कब से कब तक का सिलसिला है? ये वक्त क्या है? किसका?
What is time? What is this thing that goes on without pause? If it did not pass, then where could it have been? It must have been somewhere. It has passed. So where is it now? It must be somewhere. Where did it come from? Where did it go? Where did the process begin? Where will it end? What is time?
ये वाक़ई हाथ से तबस्सुम, हर एक गम और हर एक मसरत, हर एक अज़ियत, हर एक लज़्ज़त, हर एक तबस्सुम, हर एक आंसू, हर एक नगमा, हर एक खुशबू, वो जख्म का दर्द हो कि वो लम्स का हो जादू, खुद अपनी आवाज हो कि माहौल की सदाएं, ये जहन में बनती और बिगड़ती हुई फजाएं, वो फिक्र में आए जल्जले हों कि दिल की हलचल, तमाम एहसास, सारे जज्बे, ये जैसे पत्ते बहते पानी की सतह पर जैसे तैरते हैं, अभी यहाँ हैं, अभी वहां हैं और अब है ओझल। ये कैसा दरिया है? किन पहाड़ों से आ रहा है? ये किस समंदर को जा रहा है? वक्त क्या है?
These events, incidents, conflicts, every grief, every joy, every torment, every pleasure, every smile, every tear, every song, every scent. It may be the pain of a wound or the magic of a tender touch, one lonely voice or the sounds around, successes and failures assailing the mind, the upheavals of care, the tumults of the heart. All feelings, all emotions are like leaves floating on the surface of the water as they swim along, now here, now there, and now they disappear, though unseen. There must be something flowing along. What is this river? Which hills has it come from? Which sea is it going to? What is time?
कभी कभी मैं ये सोचता हूँ कि चलती गाड़ी से पेड़ देखो तो ऐसा लगता है दूसरी तरफ जा रहे हैं। कभी कभी मैं ये सोचता हूँ कि चलती गाड़ी से पेड़ देखो तो ऐसा लगता है दूसरी तरफ जा रहे हैं, मगर हकीकत में पेड़ अपनी जगह खड़े। तो क्या ये मुमकिन है सारी सदियां कतार अंदर कतार अपनी जगह खड़ी हों, कि वक्त साकित हो और हम ही गुजर रहे हों? इस एक लम्हे में सारे लम्हे, तमाम सदियां छुपी हुई हों, न कोई आइंदा न गुज़िश्ता। जो हो चुका है वो हो रहा है, जो होने वाला है हो रहा है। मैं सोचता हूं कि क्या ये मुमकिन है? सच ये हो कि सफर में हम हैं, गुजरते हम हैं, जिसे समझते हैं हम गुजरता है वो थमा है, गुजरता है या थमा हुआ है, इकाई है या बटा हुआ है मुंजमद या पिघल रहा है। किसे खबर है, किसे पता है ये वक्त क्या है?
Sometimes I think when I see trees from a moving train, it seems they're going in the opposite way. But in reality, the trees are standing still. So can it be that all our centuries, row upon row, are standing still? Can it be that time is fixed and we alone are in motion? Can it be that this one moment, all moments, all centuries are hidden? No future, no past. What has gone by is happening now. What will come about is happening now. I wonder, is it possible that the truth is that we are in motion? We pass by, and what we imagine is moving is really motionless. Moving, not moving. Whole or divided? Is it frozen or is it melting? Who knows? Who can guess? What is time?
ये कायनात अजीम लगता है अपनी अजमत से आज भी मुतमईन नहीं है। लम्हा लम्हा वसीतर और वसीतर होती जा रही है। ये अपनी बाहें पसारती है, ये कहकशाओं की उंगलियों से नए खलाओं को छू रही है। अगर ये सच है तो हर तसव्वुर की हद से बाहर मगर कहीं पर यकीनन ऐसा कोई खला है कि जिसको इन कहकशाओं की उंगलियों ने अब तक छुआ नहीं है। खला जहां कुछ हुआ नहीं है, खला कि जिसने किसी से भी कुन सुना नहीं है, जहां अभी तक खुदा नहीं है, वहां कोई वक्त भी ना होगा। ये कायनात अजीम एक दिन छुएगी उस अनछुए खला को और अपने सारे वजूद से जब पुकारेगी कुन, तो वक्त को भी जन्म मिलेगा। अगर जन्म है तो मौत भी है। मैं सोचता हूं ये सच नहीं है कि वक्त की कोई इब्तिदा है ना इंतहा है। ये डोर लंबी बहुत है, लेकिन अभी ये इंसान उलझ रहा है कि वक्त के इस कफस में पैदा हुआ, यहीं वो पला बड़ा है। अगर उसे इल्म हो गया है कि वक्त के इस कफस से बाहर भी एक फजा है, तो सोचता है, वो पूछता है, ये वक्त क्या है?
This glorious universe, it seems, even today is not content. With all its glory, at every moment, it becomes wider and more vast. It stretches out its arms and with its fingers like galaxies, touches other parts of space. If this is true, then beyond the limits of every imagination, but somewhere, surely there is some nothingness that has not yet been touched by the fingers of these galaxies. That space where nothing has happened, that space which has never heard the word be from anyone, where God does not exist, and in that place there will be no time. Excuse me. One day this glorious universe will reach that untouched part of space, and then with its whole existence it will cry, be. Time will be born there as well. If there be birth, there is death, I think. It is not true that time has no end and no beginning. The thread is very long, but somewhere the thread will have an end. Now mankind is confused because it was born in this cage of time. It was brought up and raised here. But now man has discovered that outside the cage of time, there lies another part of space. So he thinks, he asks, What is time?
Thank you. Now, let's come to the last poem of the evening. Then I have to face Anilji's interrogation. A sea of darkness, अंधेरे का समंदर. जहां तक भी नजर जाए अंधेरे का समंदर. उफक तक और उफक के पार भी शायद यही बस एक मंजर है. अंधेरे का समंदर ही समंदर है. अंधेरे के समंदर में एक छोटे से नुक्ते के बराबर रोशनी का एक जजीरा है कि जिस पे हम खड़े हैरान परेशान देखते हैं. और जिधर देखें हर एक संत और हर एक जानिब बस एक तारीक पानी है कि जिसमें ऊंची और मगरूर लहरें उठ रही हैं और इधर यूं बढ़ रही हैं जैसे कोई हाथियों की फौज है जो ये जजीरा रौंदने को है. हर एक लहर आके जब साहिल पे अपना तन पटकती है तो साहिल का कोई कमजोर हिस्सा टूट के साहिल से कटता है. जजीरा पीछे हटता है, सिमटता है. जमीन कम हो रही है, जमीन नम हो रही है, जमीन पैरों तले धंसने लगी है. अंधेरे के समंदर की हवा हम लोगों पे हंसने लगी है. तो क्या खामोश यूं ही डूब जाने का इरादा है? मगर कैसे भुलाओगे सूरज के उजालों से तुम्हारा कोई वादा है? तो फिर बस देखते क्या हो. चलो इन कश्तियों की रस्सियां खोलो, समंदर में उतरते हैं. कहीं तो रोशनी की भी जमीनें होंगी, उनको ढूंढने कर हो सके तो ये अंधेरे का समंदर पार करते हैं. और इस कोशिश में जीते हैं तो जीते हैं, या मरते हैं तो मरते हैं.
A sea of darkness. There's a sea of darkness stretching as far as the eye can see, till the horizon and beyond it too. Perhaps there's the same sight, nothing but a sea of darkness. There's an island of light, the size of a small dot, in the sea of darkness upon which we stand and look about in stupefaction. And wherever we look, on every side and in every direction, there's only the dark water, in which high and arrogant waves are rising and approaching us like an army of elephants about to trample this island. Whenever a wave comes and crashes its body against the shore, a weak part of the shore breaks off. And the island steps back a little. It shrinks. The land is diminishing. The land is becoming damp. The land has begun to sink under our feet. The wind coming off the sea of darkness laughs at us. So what should we do? Should we drown silently? But can you forget the vow you had made to fight, made to the light of the sun? What are you waiting for? Untie the ropes of your boats. Let us enter the sea. Surely there must be some land of light somewhere. Let us cross the sea of darkness and set out in search of them. In this attempt, if we live, we live. If we die, we die.
Thank you.
A huge thank you to Javed Saab and Tisca Chopra for those amazing renditions of Javed Saab's poems. Now, without further ado, I'd like to invite founder and festival director, Mr. Anil Dharker, to be in conversation with Javed Saab. Over to you, Mr. Dharker.
Thank you. Unmute me. Am I muted? I'm not muted. I can't hear him. Unmute yourself. I am
Okay.
unmuted.
Now
Yeah,
can you hear?
now I can. Yeah,
Okay.
I
I'm
can.
sorry. There were two buttons to press. I was pressing only one. So that was a wonderful, wonderful recital and lovely translation from Tisca. A Sea of Darkness, I thought, was such an appropriate way to end in these very dark times. And I think I wish I knew Urdu, but surely there must be some land of light somewhere. Let us cross this sea of darkness and set out in search of them. In the attempt, if we live, we live. If we die, we die. So very appropriate for today's dark times. And Javed, then I'll call you Javed and not Javed Sab, if you don't mind.
Please do that. Please do that.
Your poem Time, which I have heard before, is so profound, and I think it would change the perception of Urdu poetry of a lot of people. But during the course of your recitation, you called me an interrogator. So I should begin with an interrogation and ask you a basic question. Kaidi number 211, 911. What is poetry? And I'm not asking a frivolous question, because today a lot of people think they write poetry. If they rhyme the words, this is especially true of English poetry. The last words rhyme, they think it's a poem. And we all know that there is much more in poetry than that.
Yeah. Well, like any other form of art, poetry also has two aspects. Any form of art has a technique, craft, and imagination, passion, fantasy, romanticism, and so on. Ostensibly, these two things are perhaps incompatible. That craft that needs complete awareness, if I may say so, cleverness and objectivity. And on the other hand, we need forgetfulness and total involvement and surrender to the emotion or the feeling in poetry. And these two things somehow work together. Let's not talk of the craft, because that is very important, because that is the tool. But ultimately, what this tool is conveying, that is even more important. The rhyme, the metering, the balance of the words, what you call phonetics and so on. Yes, it is extremely important, and you have to have perfect tools to create what you want to. These are the tools. But what do you create? What do you say? If I'm saying what I think, then why am I writing a poem? Why can't I write an article? Why can't I make a speech and so on? How prose and poetry are differentiated? Only because of the rhyming? Only because of the metering? That's not right. The fact is, like there are no man's land between countries. The same way there is a no man's land between the subconscious and conscious mind. Or a conscious mind which is there but not at a beck and call all the time. There are no man's land. Poetry is produced there, because whatever I know and which is available to me, that can give me a lot of prose. But then when I enter an area where there are things which I actually myself are not aware that they are stored in my mind somewhere, and these two capabilities meet, and then you produce something which sometimes surprise you yourself also, that how you are creating it, how it is happening, because you didn't remember it. On conscious level, perhaps you had never thought of it. But the fact is that it was within your mind somewhere. We treat our brain like one-room apartment, which is conscious mind, but that's not true. It's a big palace. It has so many empty rooms and bedrooms and chambers and basements and attics and so on. And there is so much lying there that while sitting in the living room or in the office, we are not aware that this building contains so much. And sometimes when we surrender with humility and give our mind time to take over us instead of we taking over the mind through our conscious mind, it offers you something. That is, I think, the ideal place for poetry, and that is poetry. The no man's land between your conscious mind and your rest of the mind. That is where the poetry is produced. Yes, the fact remains that while this process is going on, there is one craftsman also walking behind and whispering in the ear that, listen, take this way, this is a better way, and so on. But if the craftsman dominates this person, this traveler who is wandering around in this no man's land, then the poetry will be ordinary. But if the craftsman is just a helping hand, then the poetry will be good.
Poetry is really a very, very complex art. It is not an easy art. It's easy to write prose. Yet, if you go back to the history of literature, you find that really it all began with poems mainly to God. And prose came much later. In fact, the last literary form to come into the world was the novel, which is a very, very recent thing. Now, this is surprising. Why human beings, when they started writing, they began with a more complex form and not the easy form?
Now, I can only guess, but I think the first thing that came there is the music. They wanted to sing. They wanted to make sounds. Music is sounds, words is nothing but sound. So this sound was interesting. And now came a time that they thought that it won't be a bad idea if we give words to this sound. So perhaps it was, to begin with, these were only dumb sounds which they were creating out of reverence or devotion or joy or happiness or being victorious or whatever. And then slowly they thought that let's make it meaningful, and that is how the language entered these sounds, and music and words met for the first time to create a lyric or a hymn or a poem. I must tell you one thing. You were so right when you said that poetry started with hymns in praise of God or goddesses or the deity. Whether we take Greek poetry, we take Latin, we take any other language, Arabic, they started like that, the classical languages. There is only one exception in the world, that the poetry from the word go, from the very first day, was anti-religious. And that honor belongs to Urdu. Urdu poetry started as agnostic, if not atheistic, attitude. It has a very popular form that everybody has heard, ghazal. Now, in ghazal, you have to make a complete statement in 2 lines. Every 2 lines are a complete statement. And they may or may not have any relationship with the earlier couplet. If you have to make a statement in 2 lines, I mean, even in personal life, when we want to be so precise, we develop symbols. We choose a word and decide that this word will mean all that. So we economize the language and words. Because of these symbols, we can convey much more instead of using all the words that are required. The symbol will convey everything. Now, in Urdu ghazal, right from the beginning, there are heroes and there are villains. Now, the hero is the lover, hero is the drunkard, and who are the villains? The preacher, the conservative, the religious figure. They are the villains. Which is the ideal place? Tavern, Maikhana. And which is the place to be avoided? Is harem. Harem, which means mosque. Sheikh Ji and Zahid and Muhtasib, all of them are the villains, and they have been proved wrong. They have been the butt of jokes of Urdu poetry and so on. So this is one honor, and right from the beginning, I mean, it surprises me that there is so much of poetry that perhaps today if somebody stands up and recites it, he'll be or she'll be in a physical danger. And this poetry was written 300 years ago or 400 years ago.
Why do you think Urdu poetry started as almost like godless poetry?
I think
it defies history in a sense, because of the history of literature, to start like that. And is it because there was a revolutionary fervor which poetry wanted to express, and God was not an entity as part of the of poetry?
I can only make a guess. I think, you see, every action has equal and opposite reaction, as they say. So there were some people who were conservative. There were some people who were preaching regressive values. And Urdu poetry took this challenge, picked up the gauntlet that we will speak against it. Perhaps in prose, maybe it was not that possible for them. And poetry offers you certain leeway. Poetry can talk about things which are not very tangible. It transcends immediate realities and facts and news. So perhaps this is the privilege that poetry has, which was used to counter and to fight all kind of fundamentalism and reactionary attitudes.
Yeah.
I mean, 300 years back, almost 3, if not more, a poet writes, काबा जो ढह गया है तो क्या जाए हमें शेख कुछ खसरे दिल नहीं के बनाया ना जाएगा. Says that if Kaaba is demolished, why do you feel so bad about it? I mean, it is not the palace of the heart that cannot be made again. This is a 300 years old couplet. I don't know today in Mushara if somebody recite this share, how people will react.
Yet, Javed, in the popular mind, Urdu poetry is associated with romance, is regarded as romantic poetry. So when did that transition happen? And now I think, yeah,
it was always there. You see, most of the people in this society don't read poetry. They listen to it, and preferably by a singer. So, and the singer obviously is not interested in socio-political awareness of the poetry. He finds the lowest common denominator. Most of the poetry that has been sung, most of them, not all, obviously they have sung like poets like Mir and Valuable, so or Fair, or so on. But by and large, it is the lowest common denominator, which is they find something which will be understood by just anybody. And that totally lacks any depth, any sensitivity, and it is very, very ordinary poetry. As a matter of fact, I'm being very kind to call it poetry. When you see what has been sung recently and what people do sing in the name of ghazal. But if you take a serious look, an incisive look on Urdu poetry, then you will note at any point of time, lot of serious work has been done. Like they think it is only romance. Yes, of course, in any poetry, romance always has a very high profile and a big share. But Ghalib is not considered to be an immortal poet because of his romantic poetry, because of his understanding of life and future and times and so on. I mean, when I can recite few couplets of Ghalib very quickly and translate them for you, because obviously at that time the language was unfamiliar, and he was accused of writing unfamiliar language even at that time, more than 200 years ago.
Right.
Like when he न था कुछ तो खुदा था, कुछ ना होता तो खुदा होता, तो बोला मुझको होने ने, न मैं होता तो क्या होता. See, and now this is Advait. The man is saying, when there was nothing, there was God. If there wouldn't have been anything, there would have been God. So my undoing is in being. Suppose if I would not have been, imagine what I would have been. Now this is not a romantic poet.
Right.
Like he says, oh, कि है कहाँ तमन्ना का दूसरा कदम यारब, हमने दश्ते इम्कान को एक नक्शे पाया. She's got, where is the next step of human emotion? Because the sphere of possibility is only equal to one footprint of human ambition. One footprint. So where is the next footprint? I mean, poetry is full of that. And besides that, not many people are aware that you take Indian festivals, you take Indian deities, you take Indian cities, places, and the whole freedom movement of 200 years, right from 87 and maybe earlier till today, what kind of poetry has been written in
You
Urdu?
could talk about Iqbal.
There are many. This was the thrust of poetry. But you take Jhansi Ki Rani, you take Tipu Sultan, you take Bhagat Singh, you take any national hero, and you will know how much poetry has been written on this person or incident, civil disobedience, any point. A lot of Urdu poetry is available. Culturally, not many people know that there is so much of poetry which is about Hindu deities. Like on Krishna, there is so much of literature in Urdu. Like I can say it with total confidence that on Holi or Diwali, you can't find better poem than in Urdu poetry. I can say it with total confidence.
It is said that Urdu as a language, is really suited to poetry because there is a sweetness about it. People also say you can't abuse in Urdu. And it reminds me of when I was a little boy in UP, and the driver and the cook were having a fight. And I heard the driver was this dignified old man saying, "Aap bewakoof hai." You know, you say, "Aap bewakoof hai." Now in English you would say, "You're a fool." It doesn't have the same air, right? So there is something in the language which dignifies even a statement like that. And do you think that has a lot to do with the fact that Urdu is what we might call a poetic language, intrinsically a poetic language?
Urdu is a decent language. Let's put it this way, an extremely decent language. But first of all, what is a language? What is language? Is the script or the vocabulary or what? Now, Punjabi is written in 3 scripts: Gurmukhi, Devanagari, and Urdu Rasmul Khat, which is actually Persian script. But it remains Punjabi. If I make a poster, kuch hota hai, KUCH, HOTA, HAI, is it English? No. As a matter of fact, when you write English, is it English? Because the script is Latin. Most of the European languages, particularly the Western Europe, has Latin. So it is not the script, but because Latin script is used in English, English doesn't become Latin. So let's see, maybe it is the vocabulary that is the language. So, ये webinar hai. I have used 3 words. And the most important word is webinar. Am I speaking English? No. I have used a word of English in what? In Hindustani. Why it is Hindustani? Because on this side there is web, ye, on the other side hai. So it is the syntax. And in this syntax I have used a word from some other language. So ultimately the language is syntax, not even the vocabulary. Ye room bahut bright hai. Am I speaking English? No. It is not the vocabulary. It is the syntax, the grammar that decides the language. Now let's see what is the grammar of Urdu or Hindi. What is the difference between the grammar of Urdu and Hindi? The answer is none. Because they have come out from the same dialect. Dialect, as you know, means a language that doesn't have vocabulary, that doesn't have the script. That language is called dialect. It took Persian, which was the lingua franca of the aristocracy that time, in India and in Central Asia, everywhere, like today English is. So it took that script, and some people, some 700, 800 years back, started writing Khadi Boli, this dialect, in Persian script. That is the beginning of Urdu. Now, Khusro is given credit for it, Amir Khusro, but I'm sure that there must be many other people. He was a high-profile person. This is the beginning of Urdu. And at some stage, some people started writing Khadi Boli in Devanagari script, which comes from Sanskrit, and that was called Hindi. You see, if you take old poets like Surdas, like Kabir, like Meera, like Tulsi, they are not the writers of Khadi Boli. They have written in Awadhi, they have written in Braj, they have written in Kathiawadi, and so on. But this dialect was written much later in Devanagari, much later. So this is the source, and this is what Urdu is. It is an indigenous Indian language because it is the dialect which is Indian, Khadi Boli, written in some other script. That's about all. But the script is not that important, it's a language. Now, yes, why it sounds sweet? Because for centuries, writers and critics seriously worked on its phonetics. One of the couplets that I have recited to you, it is written by Ghalib, but it was taken out of his collection. And thankfully it reads us from other sources. हमने दश्ते इम्का को एक नक्शे पाया. People, there were 2 gentlemen who edited Ghalib's Diwan, which is almost like a holy book of literature for us. So they had edited it. One of them was my grandfather. They removed this beautiful couplet which I was quoting right now only because of one reason. Sorry. Papaya. It's not a good sound. Nakshe imka ko ek nakshe papaya. Papaya doesn't sound good. So they were so careful about the phonetic effect of language. And they were so critical of anything which doesn't sound good. It has to sound good. The words have to be smooth and perfect. So this is the training that a Urdu poet gets, that he is aware of the phonetics beside the meaning. And perhaps that's why Urdu poets were always so very successful in film songs as long as the meaningful songs were required.
So Urdu is therefore a much more performative poetry, in the sense that you have to perform it. You have to say it out rather than just read it. Unlike English poetry, which I've heard the greatest English poets like T.S. Eliot recite their poems, and it just sounds so flat because because the language is not meant to be read out. Urdu poetry is meant to be spoken out. Am I right or wrong?
I mean, I'll be reaching my level of inadequacy if I talk about English literature in front of you. but I am cornered, so I'll give my humble opinion, and I can't guarantee that this is right. You see, every language has certain advantage and disadvantage. Every syntax has its advantages and disadvantages. I think English, the kind of precision English can give in prose is not possible for us means Urdu and Hindi people. A Urdu writer, prose writer, or a Hindi prose writer cannot write with this precision as it can be written in English. And I'll tell you why. You see, the structure or the syntax of the language of English reveal the suspense of the sentence or the real information in the very last word. Till you read the last word, you are not sure where the sentence is going. So there is a certain crisp quality, because after the moment you understand what the other person is saying or writing, there is no other word. There is a full stop or a comma. Where are you going? Now, going tells you what the question is. I'm going home. Home reveals the suspense. You make any sentence in your mind, the last word will reveal the suspense. The last will reveal what the person is asking or telling. While in our languages, this precision is not there. तुम कहाँ जा रहे हो? तो अभी रहे हो softens it. It's not crisp. And sometimes I see a very desperate attempt of this precision on Hindi channels when they speak ulta. कल वहां पर हो गया बवाल, कल वहां बवाल हो गया, होना चाहिए था, मगर वो desperately try to bring that precision. Now this precision is a great advantage in prose and becomes a handicap in poetry, because that soft focus, things which are gentle, things which say something unsaid, it is not there. It's a precise language. It is clear. It is sharp focus. शाम भी थी धुआं धुआं, उसमें भी था उदास उदास, दिल को कई कहानियां याद सी आके रह गई. Now दिल को कई कहानियां याद से आके रह गई. I would like to see somebody translate it in English. He is not saying कि याद आ गई. He is not saying कि नहीं याद आई. याद सी आके रह गई. You can't capture this in a European language. Sorry, not possible. Because they say what they mean. So it will be clear. This abstraction is not possible in that language. That comes handy in writing poetry. So our poetry, the kind of soft focus, backlit quality our poetry can have, is not possible in that language. The kind of precision, sharp focus, to the point writing is possible in English, is not possible in our language.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I need to ask you this, which is that your own poetry, has your language changed over the years? Your thought process obviously must have changed, but has the language itself changed in some significant way?
I don't think so. I'll tell you why. One, I'm from Lucknow. My father, my grandfather, they were also from Awadh. You can say Lucknow. Khairabad is a place which is perhaps 70, 80 miles away from Lucknow. That is where my family for generations lived. And they were well connected with the city. Lucknow and Awadh is a school right from the beginning that believe in using simple Hindustani to an extent that it is possible. Ardu Lakhnavi was a poet. Somebody told him, "Arey bhai, Urdu, aap without Persian words or Arabic words, aap Urdu kya likhenge?" He said, "We may use these words from any language. We are not dependent on them. And he said, I'll write a complete book of poetry, without using any word which has anything to do. It is even remotely rooted in Persian or Arabic. And he wrote a book, complete book, that is pure Urdu. We believe in less Persianized language than perhaps Delhi school did. One. So we come from a tradition where the language was simple and did not have that compound Persian point taken. So then I started writing as a professional film writer. So when you are writing a film, obviously you will write a language which will reach as many people as possible. Right. So again, this was the so when I started writing poetry at the age when people stop writing poetry. I was 30, 31. And then that was my language anyway, because it is important for me to communicate. I don't write poetry, but I'm giant of an intellectual. And if those people don't understand, these ordinary mortals, I don't care. I care. I'm writing and I'm reciting for them. So I better communicate. That's why my language is simple.
Wonderful. Javed, you know, our conversation could go on, and I wish we could extend it, but I'm getting these frantic signals to stop. Maybe we will continue this conversation at a future date. What I would like to do is even talk more of the language of Urdu, which now is being neglected so badly, and we should devote some time to that. And of course, we would always like to talk to you about your poetry. Thank you for being here today, our Poet Laureate for 2020. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
A huge thank you once again to Javed Saab and for our festival director, Mr. Anil Dharker, for that really enriching and enlightening exchange. And thank you to all of you for being a part of the Poet Laureate Award that we honored Javed Saab with, celebrating his life and work. Here at Tata Literature Live 2020, and to celebrate great writers, please remember to join us tomorrow evening at 6:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time as we honor the life and works of yet another great writer, our Lifetime Achievement Award winner of 2020, Mr. Rusk. To present the award to him in person will be multi-award winning director and a long-time lover of Mr. Bond's works, Vishal Bharadwaj. Remember, that's at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow, Indian Standard Time. In the meanwhile, today at 7:30, you can join us for a performance of Golden Dragon, a reading of Roland Schimmelpfennig's landmark play, followed by a conversation between the playwright and Pragya Tiwari. Also remember to log into our website tatalitlive.in so you can bookmark and not miss any of for these fraught times. क्यों डरे जिंदगी में क्या होगा? क्यों डरे जिंदगी में क्या होगा? कुछ न होगा तो तजुर्बा होगा. Thank you for being here online with us at Tata Literature Live 2020. Stay tuned and stay safe. Good night.